Let's take a look at this additional math trigo question that many students actually struggle. So tangent 190 is equals to P. So let's draw a diagram that represents ASTC that we commonly use in our A math trigo, which is actually what I call it to be all science teacher crazy. So now let's see, 190 is actually quadrant 3. So therefore 190 here. And with that, I can actually draw a right angle triangle. And I know that tangent is TOA, means is opposite over adjacent. But I'm supposed to have a fraction because it's opposite over adjacent. So I can have a divide by 1 there. And that represents my opposite in the numerator. Denominator will then be adjacent. So then with this angle 190 degree, I know that this is a straight line that gives me 180. So the remaining will be 10 degrees. So with that, the opposite side is P and the adjacent side is 1. So I also notice that this is below 0 on the y-axis, so I'll put it as negative p, and this is on the left hand side on the x-axis, so I'll put it as negative 1. With that, the hypotenuse would be square root of p squared plus 1. So right now, find cosine 190 degrees. Now cos is a h car, right? So adjacent over hypotenuse. So the adjacent of this 10 degrees is actually negative 1. And the hypotenuse would be square root of p squared plus 1. So if I were to write it properly, it will be negative 1 of square root of p squared plus 1. Now normally if my denominator has an algebraic surd form, I will not need to rationalize it. Okay, let's move on to sine negative 10. So let me draw a new diagram. Negative 10, it means that it's a reverse direction, but it's still with 10 degrees, which means that right now, the triangle that I draw previously actually resemble the triangle that I'm going to draw now. So the dimensions are exactly the same, which means I will have a P opposite side, and now I'll put a negative P because the distance P there is below the 0 on the y-axis. And in this case, my adjacent side will be positive 1 because it is at the right hand side of the x-axis. With that, the hypotenuse would be p squared plus 1. So I know that this is in quadrant 4. In quadrant 4, I expect that sine it will be negative because in quadrant 4, only c will be positive. So I expect myself to have a negative answer. But if I have already considered negative sign here, I actually don't need to worry about my negative or positive sign in my all sign still crazy. It will be taken care of. So therefore, sine negative 10, it will be SOH, opposite over hypotenuse. So opposite, it will be negative p, hypotenuse will be p squared plus 1. So if I write it properly, it will be negative p over square root of p squared plus 1. Let's move on to C, cotangent 170 degree. So let me just draw a new diagram here. 170 degree actually happens in quadrant 2. So in quadrant 2, bear in mind that S, which is sine, is the only positive trigo there. Cotangent, it means 1 over tangent 170 degree. So over here, 170 degree is my quadrant 2. The basic angle is actually 10 degrees. Again, 10 degrees, which is similar to my previous triangle, which is 10 degree basic angle, 10 degree basic angle, and right now it's also 10 degree basic angle, which means all the triangles that we are talking about is actually the reflection of one another. So in this case, my opposite of my 10 degrees is positive p. The reason is because this happens in the positive direction on the y-axis, whereas the adjacent side is negative 1 because it is at the negative direction on the x-axis. And right now, it's sufficient. I don't actually need the hypotenuse because tangent is opposite over adjacent. So therefore, it'll be 1 over opposite is p, adjacent is negative 1. So simplify, that would have been negative 1 over p. So of course, you want to test whether you fully understand the explanation here. Let me give you an question for you to try. So secant of 190 degree, are you able to do it? Comment your answer in the comment section below.